Starter Pokemon aren't the same as what they used to be. Now, is that a bad thing? I don't know, that's up to you. I'm not saying that they're better or worse, I just mean that they've changed. And they have changed drastically. The fundamentals of Starter Pokemon's design philosophy have evolved into something entirely new from what it was at the beginning of the series. So, what is that big change? To put it bluntly, every final stage of a starter Pokemon has to have some sort of job or gimmick. Let's take a look at the most recent generation of starters from Paldea. You have a magician, a singer, and a dancer. They're all entertainers. They all have some sort of role that they play that would normally be a role that a human plays. And the base forms of the starters have to somehow naturally progress into that while still retaining that mascot-worthy look. So now let's take a look at the very first starters at their final stage. We've got a Dino Frog with a tree on its back, a dragon with a flaming tail, and a turtle with cannons. No special role in sight, just animals and creatures with added fantastical elements and powers to them. Where Venusaur is a frog, but make it a plant too. Meowscarada is a cat, but make it a plant, but make it do magic tricks too. Now, this wasn't a change that happened overnight, obviously, so let's take a look back at how starter Pokemon became the way they are today. I've mostly discussed how the Kanto starters are. They're all basically scaly creatures with added elemental powers implemented into their design. That's how the majority of Pokemon were designed back in Gen 1, and clearly, based on Pokemon Red and Blue's success, that was a winning strategy. Also evidenced by how popular the original starter trio is still to this day. And even with their elemental powers, these Pokemon still have potential for cool additions to their designs, as we've seen with their Megas and Gigantamax forms. Overall, these starters are proof of why simplicity can be really effective for a Pokemon. However, that's not always the case, especially when you oversimplify, like they did with Generation 2. Now, I know there are lots of fans of the Gen 2 starters out there, and I'm about to make a lot of you mad, but all the Gen 2 starters are too simple in their designs, which is partly why none of them achieve the heights that the original trio did. Aside from Gen 1 bias, both from the community and the developers, but I digress. Meganium is just another green dino, but the leaf is on its neck instead of its back. Typhlosion has been seen numerous times just naked, making him look like a normal cartoon badger. Like seriously, look me in the eye and tell me that this is a fire type. And then Feraligatr, as much as I love him, is just an angry cartoon alligator. That's also blue. I'm not saying any of these are inherently bad, I'm just saying they're all super simple. But of course they deserve some credit too, like Typhlosion's 2D sprite when it's done right is absolutely fantastic. When Generation 3 came along, we got some amazing starters, and my personal favorites, so I'm gonna be really biased here. To start off, we have Sceptile, who is a lizard, but his cool, relaxed face sort of sets him apart from being just a lizard, and his leafy tail and size on his arm convey his grass type really well. Overall, he's just got a ton of personality. Blaziken is far from being just a chicken, standing upright in that fighting stance, being one of the first starters to really embody its secondary typing just as much, if not more, than its primary fire typing. And then Swampert. His beady eyes give him a bit more of that ferocious, animalistic look, and that combines really well with the vibrant blues and oranges to give it that classic Pokemon look. Plus, the way the fins and everything juts out, it's far from simple, but not overcomplicated either. The same can be said for all the starters this generation, for all three stages. It's the perfect balance of simplicity and decoration within the designs. They're all still animals, but none of them are just that animal. Also, this was the beginning of the special treatment that starters got, with all of them getting signature moves in Leaf Blade, Blaze Kick, and Muddy Water. The Generation 4 starter designs also had a nice balance of simplicity and decoration, but this is where the extra influence starts becoming really clear in the final stage designs. For this generation, this time it's a turtle with a tree on its back, but Torterra is clearly supposed to represent the whole Earth, not just a tree, with influence from the world turtle myth from several mythologies. Then we have Infernape, who instead of just being a fire monkey, is the Fire Monkey King, clearly influenced by the myth of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, a real step up from just animal with elemental stylization. And then Empoleon, who instead of a myth is just the historical figure Napoleon, that French guy, but this time he's a penguin. And there's absolutely some Poseidon influence too with the Trident Crown, which is a really cool and great implementation of the steel typing in the design. But overall, yes, these are all animals, but they're also characters. And they also have multiple elemental types that are incorporated into the design on different levels, like how Torterra's ground and grass type both correlate to it being the world turtle. The design philosophy is more complicated than it's ever been, but it's also done really well on all fronts, which I really like. However, at this point, we've crossed a threshold. From now on, every starter can't just be an animal with powers, and simplicity has been thrown out the window completely, because this time, we have a wrestler, another Emperor Royal thing, and a samurai. I think Samurai is the best one here because it isn't just a samurai, it's pretty far removed from being an otter too, but with the horns and arm blades and all, it's become something very distinct. Superior, for me, is hard to take seriously. I like its snobby personality, but the arms make it hard for me to take seriously. The fleur-de-lis style, though, really works well for the grass typing. And Imbor is, well, a bit overdone in a lot of ways. We've already seen this firefighting standing animal done already, so it's far from original. And also, the pattern it has doesn't make much sense, it's just kind of plastered on, as it doesn't necessarily tie into the typing very well. It's just supposed to indicate that its influence has roots in Chinese style. For all these starters though, we can see the special treatment even more as we continue seeing them get signature moves, but also Gen 5 brought along hidden abilities, which all of them got even if the abilities themselves weren't special to them. However, the following generation, the hidden abilities did become signature for the starters, with Greninja's infamous Protean, Delphox's Magician, and Chestnut's Bulletproof. Even these abilities derive from the increasingly more niche design influences, with all of them being classic fantasy tropes of an armored knight, a mage, and a ninja. Different kind of fantasy, but fantasy nonetheless. Chestnut is a gopher, covered in spiky armor, which works really well with the grass typing whenever you think of all the spiky plants out there, like briars and pointy bushes and stuff. All in all, hence bulletproof. Delphox is literally a magician. The ability is called Magician. It's psychic type. Whoa, magic is psychic, shocker. This one is pretty cut and dried. And then Greninja is a frog that's particularly stealthy, slick, if you will, and has Protean, which apparently means being very versatile and able to change quickly, which I did not know before this. It also makes a lot of sense for a ninja who's always disappearing and reappearing, and a frog who is versatile, being able to live both in the water and on land. And it moves fast, it all works together very well. Even if some of these Pokemon aren't the most popular, it's really evident how much care they put into these design philosophies and how they incorporate with the new hidden abilities. In Generation 7, we've officially reached this era of, you know full well when you see the base forms that these final forms are going to be some sort of a gimmick. And what do you know, we have a singer, another wrestler, and an archer. I think these are all really well done though. For Primarina, the idea that it's like a mermaid and a siren works great for the water and fairy typing. It just happens to be a sea lion because it's a starter Pokemon, so it had to be some kind of animal. Then Incineroar, who is just WWE Tony the Tiger, who also breathes fire, but at least the dark typing makes sense, even if it looks like it would just be another fighting type. And Decidueye, who from a design philosophy perspective is one of the best starters in my opinion, who as an archer and Robin Hood-esque figure incorporates the fact that arrows are made with feathers, and him being a bird so the arrows are feathers, but the feathers are also like leaves because it's a grass type, and it's ghost type too because owls are sometimes depicted as harbingers of death. It all just works really freaking well together. And of course, they all got their own special cutscene Z moves to highlight their special little real-world influences, and signature moves and hidden abilities, all of which has become expected by this point. Generation 8 to me kind of felt like a step backwards. While they all have some sort of role that would normally be attributed to a person, they were all kind of generic this time around. Nothing mythological, no historical figures, nothing high fantasy, just soccer, band, and guns. I understand what they were going for, but the Pokemon world is a place that people go into to get away from real life and immerse themselves into a realm with all these fantasy creatures. Not somewhere where it's all just sports, music, and shooting that you'd see all over regular news programming. However, I'm not saying that these design philosophies are bad, that's just my opinion. To give them their flowers, these are all really simple and well incorporated designs. They all work well with the respective monotyping, and none of them are too fancy, not even in the Gigantamax form. It's the same idea, just bigger. But if you appreciate the simplicity of earlier generations, this is as simple as it's been since all the starters had to have this other role to play. And now we've reached present day with Gen 9, and of course, we have another singer, another magician, and a dancer. And sort of similar to Generation 8, these Pokemon are just sort of their special traits. It's become so expected at this point that it's lost its charm, especially when the influence doesn't go beyond just being a duck that salsa dances. For me personally, I can appreciate the extra elements to the designs, but it just feels uninspired. Skeledirge is definitely the best one here, with the Dia de los Muertos influence being woven into the ghost typing, but it's not abundantly clear what the bird is doing on its nose, or how any of it relates to him being a singer. I'm not saying there's no connection, I'm just saying it's not cohesive enough for a casual viewer to get what the whole design is supposed to indicate. This generation is at a weird crossroad of being too simple and somehow still overcomplicated. There's simultaneously too much going on here, but also not enough. I know it won't happen, but I'd love to see a return of starter Pokemon that don't have to be anything else. They don't have to sing or dance or wrestle or anything over the top. They can just be cool elemental animals like back in the first few generations and still have tons of personality. Let me know what you want to see out of future generations of starter Pokemon in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more Pokemon content. Thanks for watching.